Greetings, space engineers, and welcome to what is going to be the first of a 4-episode miniseries I'm working on, where I go through the step-by-step process of building some utility vehicles that will help you when running scenarios where you have limited or no jetpack use. Um, Obviously, these can be used in any scenario, but they're geared most towards those challenge scenarios. Um, Today we're going to be starting by building a cherry picker. As a quick preface with this, I am working on I'm working off of a design done by Splitsie from his Survival Impossible series. A link to the particular video is down in the description. I do make some modifications to this build to better suit some of my own build theory. However, since I am using one of Splitsie's builds as a point of reference, credit where credit is due. So let's go ahead and get into it. Here I've set up a bit of a preliminary base. As part of the point of these builds is the practical application of them. In that, these are builds that would be particularly helpful in scenarios like this, with structures like this. Obviously, they're not limited to just this. But in addition, the plan is that these first two builds, the cherry picker and then a scissor lift, are going to be used to help with building a large grid crane. So, let's go ahead and get things started. Now, I've already set up one of my toolbars with some of the components needed. We've got batteries, which are going to be our primary power source, our wheels, a gyroscope, antenna, remote control, landing gear, piston, and hinges. Now, there are a few more items that we'll be using once we get to the point of building the basket for this. But for the main chassis, these are the parts that we're going to need. So, we are going to start with our rear end. We're going to set in a light armor slope 2x1 base. We'll set in a full light armor block, and then another base onto the back of that. Now, off of this armor block, we're going to take our 2x2 wheels. Now, obviously, you can use 3x3s for this, and in certain environments, 3x3s might prove to be more useful. For this build, however, we're going to go ahead and stick with the 2x2s, just to give it a bit more of a compact frame. Now, for this, we're going to run a trail. We'll start with just 4 of these half light armor blocks. And next bit that we're going to slap down, that I should have picked up earlier, is we're going to be using the 3x3 advanced rotor. And that is going to be slapped down just forward of our rearmost bumper block. So that's going to make sure that we keep this forward of our rear axle. That's going to be very important for our stability. Now, at the front of this, we're going to set down a couple of batteries. Actually, I already stuffed that up. Indeed I have. So, before we set that in, we are actually going to build just a bit of a platform for this to rest on. So we will be coming back through and doing a bit more filling in on this. But this is just to get us started. So now we'll go ahead and place in our batteries. I'm going to be using the Warfare batteries. That's just because I kind of like the look of them a bit better. we're going to continue our half-light armor blocks till we get to right up in here, where we will then switch back to the slope. And off the front of this, we will place our antenna with our remote control right above that. This is going to be how we drive this, since our control point is going to be on a subgrid. Then off of the antenna, we're going to put our front axles. Now this part I like to set up right off the bat. We're going to turn off steering and braking on our front wheels. Now for your own builds, you're welcome to set the steering to be the front wheel, the front axles instead of the rear, or have both axles steering. For me, and the purposes of this build, I'm going to have it where the rear axle is the steer axle. Regardless, though, I would recommend turning off the braking on your front wheels, as this will reduce how much the front end of your cherry picker will nosedive when you hit the brakes. So, with all that in place, we'll make use of this terminal here real quick. We're going to grab all these suspensions, and we're going to set the strength on them. I usually run 15 as kind of a default value for my strength. We're also going to set the speed limit relatively low, only about 95 kilometers per hour. You're welcome to tweak that up or down as you need. For me, I prefer to try and keep some of those speed limits relatively low, particularly for some of these utility builds, just because you don't want to end up with issues happening later on. So, with the base of our rotor all situated, there are a few more things that will be added to this in a minute. But first things first, we want to get our rotor situated. So this is going to be our lifting arm. And for this, on the back end here, we are going to set a trio of these small hinges. And for this, you want to make sure that they are all facing the same direction. So the two little tick marks that you can see on there, you want to make sure that for all three of these, you want to make sure that for all three of these, they're all facing in the same direction. It doesn't really matter if it's front or back, you just want to make sure that all three of them are all facing either front or back. This makes some of your later setup a lot easier. So once we get all of those put in, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the hinge part on the two outer hinges. Then onto our center hinge, we're going to place our first piston. And just for a bit of looks, as well as to connect everything together, we use the light armor slope base here on both sides. And then we'll go ahead and onto the back of those bases, set in our hinge parts. And as soon as Build Vision wants to cooperate, see that one's attached. We're going to get these other two attached. And so now all three hinges are going to be contributing their power to lifting and lowering this piston. Now for the time being, we're going to take our outer two hinges and turn them off. That way we can take this one, and for this part, it's not critically important, but it does come in handy later to take note of the direction that this turns. So positive values are going to be lifting, negative values will be lowering. This will help when it comes to setting up the final controls. Now, I'm going to take this lower limit, and we're going to set that to 89, just so that we have a slight elevation on this. That will reduce the chance of save shenanigans breaking something. And for the upper limit, we're going to drop this. We don't want this setup to go quite fully vertical, so we're going to set an upper limit of 10. We'll set it to 10 degrees for the time being. So off the front of this, we are then going to attach a line of pistons. Do a set of 4. And this is where we build our baskets. So for the first part, do a full block and 2 of these armor slope bases. And onto each of these bases, we are going to place a hinge. And similar thing as on the back end, we're going to make sure that the 2 little notches, the little fin bits, are facing in the same direction. Pick one of these and get rid of the hinge part. And off the front of this, I'm going to use the 2x1 slope tip and the half light armor block to make our connection point here. That in.
Energy low.
And attach. So while we're looking at this, go ahead and come in here, and we're going to take all of our hinges and our pistons. We're going to turn on share inertia tensor, just so that we can get rid of all that bouncing. We're going to leave it off on the base rotor, but everything else is going to have share inertia tensor on. So now for a basket. From here, we're going to build down 2 blocks, and this will create the basis of our platform. And out from either side, we're going to go 4 blocks. Actually, I think for this one I'll keep it at 3, just because we don't want this too terribly wide. So 3 blocks out. We're going to use the half slope light armor block to do our little side frame. Build that 5 blocks forward on either side. then we'll bring things right back across. Now, on the front end here, I'm going to set in our little risers. With our front guard railing. On the back end here, we're going to make use of some of the half slope blocks.
Fuel critical.
Which will connect, well, before we set those in. And there we have it. So, for our purposes, we will be boarding from this side. But as you can see, this does leave us lacking a standing surface. For that, we are going to use some window blocks. Now, for this, what I'm actually going to do is I'll turn off. We'll grab ourselves some girders. And turn off my creative mode so that I can place these without them being in their finished build state. Because we're going for the wireframe grading look for our platform. Now, of course, we need a control.
Energy low.
And for that, bring back our creative. We are using a helm. So this is going to be our point of control. And that's going to be for accessing our remote control, as well as for controlling the piston and the pistons, rotor, and hinges. So with all that put in place, we have a few more things to add to the back end here. First thing is we're going to want a way to be able to charge this, and so we'll use a small connector, and we'll just slap that on here in the center. And then we're also going to want a programmable block. Now for this, just for aesthetic choices, we're going to use the automaton programmable block. We're going to slap that right in there. And this is because in order to control this, we're going to be making use of the park script. That is the piston and rotor keybinds. I find that it makes controlling this a lot smoother. I experience considerably less jank
Energy critical.
with it this way. So let's go ahead and grab here, get into think a couple of these hinges. Okay, good. All of those do have their share inertia tensor. So we're going to want to put all of these. We're going to want our basically everything in that's going to be controlling the cherry picker. So the helm, as well as all of the parts, the hinges, pistons, all of that. We're going to want to put it all into a single group. And for the time being, we're just going to call it park. So from there, we then go into our programmable block. Going to grab our script. Yeah, piston and rotor keybinds by Trekker. And this will go through and give us all of the relevant setup values. So check our code and okay. So we then go into our custom data. We have our main control, and this is going to be the main control functions for the boom arm. And I'm going to set this up with 2 sets. And in a second, you're going to see why. So we're just going to call the second one secondary. Alrighty. Now, for this, we are going to have to make sure that we set the script on toggle commands, since, well, correction. If you're running this on a regular rover with just a single cockpit, you will want to make sure that you have toggle commands to turn the script on and off. That way you don't accidentally end up controlling your pistons and rotors and all that while trying to drive. But because we are driving through the use of a remote control on this, we don't have to worry about that in this particular build. So, if we go into any of our blocks here, they're part of the part group, go into our custom data, you'll see that we have these settings for our 2 control sets. Now, some of this will take a bit of entering values and then hitting the controls just to see what happens. So, for this, we want our left and right. So we're going to start by setting our left to 1. We'll hit OK. And to make things easy for this, I'm going to go ahead and rename our programmable block. And this is a naming convention that I use for my programmable blocks, just to keep them at certain points in certain positions on the control panel, just to make them easier to find. So go back into this, recompile. So when we hit left, alright, let's go back to our rotor, custom data. So for the left, we want to set that to a -1, and for the right, we'll set that to 1. Hit OK, go back in, recompile, and there we go. Now this control set is going to be the same for our secondary control scheme. So we'll go ahead and get those set in now. Now, next step is going to be the pistons, custom data, and these are going to be forward and backward. And to start off with, we're going to set them to 0.25 on our speed. And again, we'll set that for both the forward and backwards. And because we have multiples, we're actually going to make this a little bit easier on ourselves. And we're just going to do a copy paste for all of them. Back here to our programmable block, recompile. And there we go.
Fuel critical.
Real quick for this part, I'm going to go ahead and turn this hinge off so that we can take a look at this one. Negative is up, positive down. Alright. For this, we want our upper limit we can set at 90. Let's see if I did that properly. Now, what this should do is keep this level with our main chassis. Turn that one back on. We're going to change the name on this one to, for this sake, or for this build, I'm just going to set it as basket pivot. For your own builds, you can give this whatever name you would like. We'll get both of these set. That means that these are going to be for the boom base. velocity. Turn all three of these on. Alright, so positive velocity is up. So we'll come into our custom data, and for our up, we're going to set that at, we'll do it 0.5 for now. And for down, set it as negative. And we'll put the same thing here. And we'll do the same copy paste through these three. Now for the basket, we're actually going to invert those. We want to see if I actually get this correct. So for up, that's going to be negative. And for the down, it's going to be positive. Quick recompile. Let's see if I got that correct. No, I did not. Nope. Alright, so it looks like I got my limits. I may have still got those. Okay. 1 degree. Look at our limits here. So better make sure that I get the same limit set in these. Let's try swapping these around, because I think I may have gotten things just a little... I think I got my orientations crossed. Let's hit OK. Back. And recompile again. Let's see if this time that works. There we go. So this is why we're going for 2 control schemes, for 2 sets. We've got one that will move both arms together, keeping the basket level. And this is going to be best utilized when working from a flat surface. Our secondary set will give the basket pivots they'll have their own separate bit. So for these, they're going to be controlled by the roll. So we'll have the up and down for the back end, and then we'll use our roll for the front end on the secondary command. But that now gives us our control. Now the next bit is I'm going to use that for our basket and the boom. Is we're going to set a return. So the return position is going to be 1. We'll set that here as well. This is going to be -89, as is this. I want to set those speeds at the 0.5. Set the speeds here as well. We'll bring both of those up. We'll set the return speed on our rotor as well. Just to make sure that I set that up correctly, come into our edits. So if we set, let's go ahead and kind of bump this off to the janky bit. Also want to make sure we want our rotor to be the first item to return. Then we'll set everything else And there we go. And so just like that, with a single command, we can bring our basket right back to the 0 position. And this will be, this is great for those of you that have a little bit of OCD when it comes to some of those command strings. So we'll go ahead and jump out of that.
Critical.
Actually, before we do, want to grab our remote control. We're going to set that to control. We'll grab our park. Main. Secondary. And return.
Fuel critical.
That's going to be our control sets for all of those. Now, one final bit before we drop this is, because of the nature of this build, we are going to want a way to be able to secure it to the ground. And for that, we're going to place in a landing gear just here off the side. Make sure that you take that off of auto lock. Something else that I almost forgot to add in. And this would have been a little detrimental if we forgot it. Our gyroscope. And there we go. Now, you will notice that this is a little bit difficult to jump into with the rover as it currently is. But we will fix that momentarily. So jump into this and grab our remote control block. For the cherry picker, we'll put the wheels into a group of CP wheels. And on here, we're not going to worry about the handbrake just because that immediately resets once we relinquish control. So we're going to go to our group, grab our CP wheels, and we're going to have a decrease and increase height offset. And we're going to grab our landing gear and set that to a switch lock. I got this set up all nice and neat. Drop this down until our landing gear lock, shows as ready. Lock it.
Fuel critical.
And now you can jump in without any trouble. Now, we'll hop in, grab our control again, release our lock, and for driving, we're going to raise the basket just a little bit here. And this is just going to help as we go over some rougher terrain. Jump back into control of this. And we're going to carefully make our way out of the hangar. Now, obviously, you're not going to be doing any Bahaing with this. But let's go ahead and show it in action. So let's say that we need to do some work on this wind turbine here. Carousel's parked. Go ahead and raise our basket. As you can see, we are automatically just staying right level where we need to be. We'll bring her right on up. Turn. We're going to run this so that I have that basket edge facing the tower. And this right here is why it's very, very important that you have the landing gear.
Fuel critical.
Because otherwise, this would have flipped, turning it like that. We will have knocked that thing over. But, that lets us get right up here to repair and or even replace this wind turbine. Go ahead, bring her back down. And hit our return. Now, naturally, you can tweak the speed values as you see fit for this. I like to keep them slow just because it reduces just how much the entire thing will jerk and shake as you use it. Plus, if you suddenly realize that you're too close to something, it's a lot easier to stop and correct if you're not moving, at 10 meters per second. So, there you guys have it. That is the cherry picker build. Hopefully, that was straightforward enough for you guys to follow along with. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. And next week I'll be doing a tutorial video for a scissor lift. So again, appreciate you guys watching, and until next time, take care everyone.